Welcome back, true crime fans.
The prison that breaks men, only the strong survive, or so they say. Smash that subscribe button if you think you could last a single day inside America's most feared prison, Pelican Bay. The concrete echoed differently here. In most prisons, you could still hear life, the shuffle of feet, the low murmur of men talking through bars. But at Pelican Bay State Prison, the silence felt designed. It wasn't just quiet, it was deliberate, oppressive, and complete. Every inmate who crossed through those steel gates understood one thing immediately. This wasn't a place for rehabilitation. This was containment, a living experiment in control. The Northern California fog rolled in heavy that morning, shrouding the razor wire and guard towers in a pale haze. Officers called it ghost weather, the kind that made the yard look like it stretched into nowhere. On the lower yard, a handful of men stood still in their concrete pens, pacing small circles like caged predators. Each was separated by 20 feet of reinforced steel and mesh, each with a different rhythm, the only trace of individuality left to them. Inside, Sergeant Myers watched the monitors. "No talking, no hand signs, no contact," he muttered to the rookie standing beside him. "You see movement that ain't pacing, you call it." The rookie nodded, eyes wide. The monitors flickered in grainy black and white. Unit BSHU, the security housing unit, better known as the Hole. This was where the prison kept men like Luis Valdez, a lifer with ties to the Mexican mafia, and Marcus Dane, a former street enforcer turned self-styled philosopher after 15 years of isolation. Their names never appeared on visitor lists. Their mail arrived weeks late, if at all. For them, time didn't move. It dripped. Luis had once led a yard crew on the outside. Now, he hadn't touched another human hand in 12 years. He marked the passing days by tracing lines into the grout with a fingernail. 120 marks per wall, each one fading like a memory. He knew what the guards thought of them: animals, monsters, ghosts. But Luis still dreamed. Not of escape. He knew better than that. He dreamed of trees. He hadn't seen one since the day he was sentenced. Across the tier, Marcus Dane sat cross-legged on his bunk, the faint hum of fluorescent light vibrating in his skull. He was writing, again. Lines of cramped words filled a notebook he would never be allowed to mail. "To exist is to remember you exist," he wrote. "To forget is freedom." The guards didn't know what to make of him. Some thought he was broken. Others thought he was dangerous precisely because he wasn't. In Pelican Bay, silence could be a weapon. What no one in the control booth saw that morning, what the cameras couldn't quite capture, was the message scratched beneath a vent and C-block. It was small, almost invisible. 4 words carved deep into the concrete: "The system bleeds too." Nobody knew who wrote it or when. But when the maintenance crew found it, the warden ordered the entire tier locked down for inspection. That's when they found something else. Hidden inside the hollow base of a light fixture was a piece of wire, thin, frayed, almost harmless. Almost. For the staff, it was a chilling reminder that Pelican Bay's control wasn't perfect. For the men inside, it was proof that the fortress could be touched, even wounded. The inspection spread through the prison like wildfire. Cells stripped, inmates restrained, property tossed into piles. The guards shouted commands, but the walls swallowed their voices. Marcus watched through his food slot as they tore apart his cell, every letter, every page of his notebook. When the officer reached the final page, he paused. On it, in uneven handwriting, were 3 words: "We are listening." That night, Marcus was moved to a new cell, deeper in the unit, away from others. No explanation, no hearing, just a transfer slip. In the control room, Sergeant Myers studied the incident report. Wire found in fixture. Possible contraband communication. No suspect identified. But the unease in his stomach didn't fade. Days turned to weeks. The staff doubled the rounds. The inmates adjusted. Pelican Bay had always been a test of endurance. Who would break first, the prisoners or the institution itself. One rainy evening, as the floodlights glared over the yard, an alarm cut through the static. Inmate Valdez was found collapsed in his cell, clutching a torn envelope. Inside it was a strip of paper, a photocopy of the message from the vent. "The system bleeds too." The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire through the SHU. Some said Valdez had finally cracked. Others whispered he'd been silenced. The administration called it an isolated incident, but Myers couldn't shake the thought that someone, or something, inside the prison was sending a message back. Pelican Bay was built to contain men, not ideas. And ideas, once they start to move, are harder to cage than any inmate. By the time dawn broke, the fog had returned. Guards made their rounds, inmates resumed their routines, and the concrete silence swallowed the truth once again. But behind one of those soundproof doors, Marcus Dane pressed his palm against the wall and whispered, "It's not the system that breaks us. It's what it teaches us to break." And somewhere deep in the labyrinth of Pelican Bay, another hand, unseen, knocked back. If you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Chapter 2 will reveal the secret that made Pelican Bay tremble from within. The cost of control. By the early 2000s, Pelican Bay had become a name whispered with both awe and dread among inmates and officers alike. To outsiders, it was a model of security and order. To those inside, it was a pressure cooker sealed shut. Every decision, every policy, every punishment fed the same loop, a system built to maintain control at any cost. Captain Raymond Ray Fletcher knew it better than anyone. He'd worked his way up from rookie corrections officer to unit supervisor, serving nearly 20 years within the walls. He had seen every kind of man pass through the gates, some broken, some defiant, and a few who seemed to disappear into themselves entirely. But in recent months, something had begun to shift. The quiet that once marked the SHU's dominance had been replaced by a tension too thick to ignore. There were coded messages scratched into cell walls, names, times, cryptic warnings like 5 days left. Food slots slammed harder than usual. The night shift started reporting muffled knocks, 3 taps, then silence. Ray's instincts told him what the administration didn't want to hear. The control they built was cracking. It started with a search. A cell in C-Pod was turned upside down after a rookie officer claimed he saw an inmate swallow something small and metallic. When they pulled the man, a lifer named Victor Ghost Delgado, out for strip search, he was silent, smiling faintly. They found nothing. But the next morning, Delgado was dead. The report said cardiac arrest. The inmates said otherwise. They said Delgado had whispered to another man in the exercise yard the day before. Something about a way out. When Ray reviewed the surveillance tape, the footage glitched. The timestamp froze for 7 seconds. When it resumed, Delgado was already on the ground, his hands shaking violently. Ray leaned back in his chair, staring at the paused frame. How does a man with no heart issues just drop dead in a supermax where nothing is supposed to happen by accident? His supervisor, Lieutenant Harris, was less concerned. "You know how it works, Ray. He probably got hold of something he shouldn't have, or maybe he finally had enough. They all do." But Ray wasn't buying it. Something about the look on Delgado's face, that faint, knowing smile, stuck with him. Meanwhile, in D-Pod, the men were starting to test boundaries. A food tray left on the floor too long became a message board. Initials scratched into the plastic, signaling who was next for wreck. When the officers caught on and confiscated the trays, someone started etching the same marks into the walls. One night, a young officer named Martinez heard the tapping again. 3 sharp knocks, then 2, then 1. He followed the sound to cell 214, belonging to an inmate named Curtis Red Monroe. Red had been in solitary for 11 years after stabbing a rival in the yard. Martinez opened the observation slot and whispered, "What do you want?" A voice came back, barely audible, "It's starting." "What's starting?" No answer. Just tapping. The next morning, Red's window was covered in blood. He'd written one word with his hand, tunnel. But the shoe was built on reinforced concrete. There were no tunnels. Ray started digging through old incident logs. The deeper he went, the more inconsistencies he found, transfer records that didn't match, inmate counts that fluctuated by 1 or 2 in the same unit, unexplained power outages during lockdowns. It was as if parts of the prison's history were being quietly erased. He spoke to a maintenance worker who'd been at Pelican Bay since opening day. The man was jittery, eyes darting around the break room. "Look," the worker said, "this place wasn't built the way they said it was. There's crawl space between the service tunnels, old ones from when they expanded the shoe in '96. Most sealed up, but not all. The blueprints got lost after the riot in '99. Ray's pulse quickened. "You saying there's access points?" The worker nodded slowly. "Was. I don't go near that wing anymore. Too many stories." "What stories?" "About voices. About things moving down there when no one's assigned." Ray wasn't superstitious, but he was practical. If inmates had found a way to communicate, or worse, move, through forgotten tunnels, it would explain everything. But when he requested maintenance schematics from administration, his access was revoked the same day. That week, another incident rocked the prison. During morning rounds, a guard found a note folded neatly under a food tray in F-Pod. It wasn't written on prison stationery or contraband. It was typed, printed cleanly, like it came from inside an office. It read, "You built the perfect cage, but you forgot who you locked inside." No one claimed responsibility. Cameras showed no sign of anyone placing it. The note was destroyed by order of Warden Milner, who called it an inmate prank. But Ray wasn't so sure. He'd begun keeping his own copies of reports, scanning them secretly and sending them to his personal email until the system blocked him from external access. It was becoming clear the cracks weren't just in the walls. They were in the institution itself. Meanwhile, inmates in the SHU were developing a strange rhythm, coordinated banging during shift changes, flashes of movement caught by cameras, but never verified. When the central control room reported that a door in B-Pod opened without command input, the warden ordered a full lockdown. Every inmate was strip-searched, every cell inspected, nothing found. But the system showed that one door, cell 118, had indeed been unlocked for precisely 12 seconds. That cell had belonged to Victor Delgado, the man who died 2 weeks earlier. By now, paranoia was spreading like wildfire. Officers whispered about the glitch, about how Pelican Bay's security systems weren't as airtight as everyone believed. Ray couldn't sleep. He began walking the corridors late at night, checking locks himself. It was during one of these patrols that he saw it, a faint beam of light flickering beneath a utility door near the base of D-Pod. When he tried to open it, it was welded shut. He crouched and looked closer. The edge of the door had been scraped, recently, as if someone had tried to pry it open from the other side. The next day, the door was gone, replaced by a new panel of concrete, smoothed and painted over. No record of maintenance. When Ray asked about it, he was told there had never been a door there at all. That night, a prison-wide blackout plunged the SHU into darkness for 6 minutes. When the lights came back on, 4 cameras in D-Pod were dead, all pointing toward the same corridor. And as technicians worked to restore the feed, the control monitors flickered once more, showing a single frame before cutting to black. It was a hallway, dimly lit concrete, with a shadow of someone walking toward the camera. Except that part of the prison wasn't supposed to exist.